Hey Alice, how's it going? You walked in at a good time. We got ARREIS Rising. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're gonna have a good talk. ARREIS just released Vices, Dante's Inferno themed 9-track record.
Yeah.
And then you've also got Reconciling Religious Trauma, which is a 9-part series that you're in the middle of releasing right now.
Yes, we just completed week 5.
That's really good work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
It's important stuff to talk about. It can be kind of uncomfortable for people, and they kind of bottle it up, I think. So letting people know that it's okay to talk about that kind of stuff, I think, is really important. So.
Me too. I think that in our community, especially as musicians, we have a duty to obviously be relatable to people, And I think that sometimes that relatability comes from bringing up the uncomfortable topics. But again, letting people know that, we're welcoming you to, to interject and to, to let you know that we're just like you. We're just people. We're just doing the same thing. We're not just these crazy artists that are, trying to scream into the void of nothing and talk about things that, don't matter. I write about things that are very personal to me. So I try my best to then hopefully frame it in a way that other people can understand and relate and hopefully heal. That's what I think the whole point of both the album and the post-series that I'm now releasing on YouTube is to reconcile. It is to heal. It is to hopefully move on and get stronger and get better and come to terms with what you believe in or what you don't believe in, honestly.
It's a beautiful thing. You have a show coming up at the Basement June 23rd with
Jack the
Underdog.
Yep. So that's my next big Nashville show. I'm a big advocate for the LGBT community. I'm bi myself, and I really love the drag community as well. So when all the things kind of went down in Tennessee, in the anti-drag bill, it really hit close to home with a lot of my friends that are local drag queens. And so me and my friend Jack, we wanted to throw a, drag-friendly Pride showcase. And so we're going to do that on June 23rd, the night before Nashville Pride here.
That is another amazing thing. You're doing a lot of good work. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It's you're very talented. I've seen you perform before.
Thank you.
And you're doing things that are good for the community. I'm also bi-gender myself. I present female as well sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess that personally I appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Also, then what pronouns would you prefer me use?
So when I'm presenting male, I guess I prefer male pronouns, and then female, I prefer female pronouns.
Fabulous. Thank you. Okay. So that's...
And what about you?
I'm she, her, hers.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I mean, also gender, and this is something that I feel like people don't realize, is that it really is a spectrum, So I identify as female, but I wear basketball shorts and, flops and sometimes, in a muscle tee, and I'm not and if you were they, I'm not, that's how I'm presenting. I feel like it kind of comes in waves. I can be hyper feminine, but look at me right now. I'm not at all, I'm just very neutral sometimes too. So actually it more comes from my places. I just don't want to get ready visually for things. It takes a lot of work, okay? I got the nails and the eyelashes and the hair and the sparkles. That takes hours and money. So sometimes I'm just we are setting the bar very low. We're not shaving the legs today. I'm so sorry. Everybody who wants to comment on it, they can. I don't care. But no, thank you for saying that. It's very important to me. Once I realized I was bi after I went to the religious school that I went to, which I'm sure we will get into because it's so, prominent in my Vices journey. But I realized I was bi because I took so much personal offense to the attack on the LGBT community that came from this school and from the church. And I knew a lot of great people, like my best friend who I moved to Nashville with, who is one of the local queens now. They moved with me here, and they were just such a good friend to me that I was upset, I thought, on behalf of them. But then the more that I started hearing all this, I would go home and I'd cry and I'd be like, why? Why? And I was like, wow, I think this is because this is always something I've taken with me, and I grew up in the church and I never really got the chance to explore or acknowledge that part of me. It was always same-sex attraction is the sin, you know, or isn't a sin, but then giving into it and being, you know, gay or a lesbian is the sin, you know, which is always just so, we're just splitting hairs at that point, and I'm just like, what are we actually talking about? But regardless of all that, it's been 100% part of my mission is to uplift women and then to uplift people in the LGBT community. And any way that I can do that, it's Pride season. So let's go, you know, let's get gay. That's what I'm saying. So that's definitely, thank you for validating me and encouraging me on that, because sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing? The show is now so much to plan and all this stuff, and it's overwhelming. But
it's worth it. It's
so worth it, and I really just want to help in the most genuine, authentic way. I feel like I was put on this earth, and I was, you know, I'm here for a reason. I do still believe that, even though that's kind of a religious trope. I definitely still believe it because I hope that I can do good, and I think that I was given the gift of music, hopefully, to use it for helping other people.
Do you have anything coming up in Chicago you want to promote?
I do. So I'm actually playing 2 shows. One's in the suburbs. It's at a cool theater. It's called the Fox Rivers Edge Theater. That's Friday, May 26th. And then Saturday, May 27th, I'm downtown and playing at Golden Dagger, which is a super cool downtown venue, and I'm really stoked about that show. Both shows, I'm playing with the Vultures, they're such a sick band, like alt-rock band from Chicago that I'm very close with all their members. I'm dating their lead singer. He's sick. He just moved to Nashville. And then all the other boys, though, are really cool, and they've got some awesome music. And then the Kings Rising and Isabella Snow, I think, are the other 2 acts for those 2 days. But all of them are awesome artists, and they're going to be 2 pretty lit shows.
Nice. Growing up, what denomination was it in the church?
Okay, yeah, let's jump right into it. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. It's where I'm from. And I went to this Baptist academy from probably like pre-K, 4 years old until...
So school and religion are tied together.
Yes, are very tied together. Mm-hmm. And I went to that church and went to that school. It was called Market Manor Baptist Academy from pre-K through 6th grade. So 4 to about 12. The main things that stand out in my mind there, obviously, are a couple things. One was dress code. Dress code was insane. And it wasn't like you had to wear a uniform, because that's more like a very like Catholic school thing to do, I feel. But we had to, like, women had to wear skirts that were below their knees, and like and then like a short sleeve shirt that came down a certain amount of inches past your shoulder. So you basically were Amish, and and I was just sort of like, what? And I immediately, the only thing I ever really got in trouble for in school was dress code. Like, I would have one slit that was more than 2 inches or whatever, so I would immediately they call it a blue slip, or, it was like the kids' version of detention.
Wow.
Or, like, even to kindergartners, they would, like, I remember this one, the like, small kid punishment system where it's like, remove a crayon from your crayon box, and it's this little, like, sticky thing on the wall. So I'd have to, like, remove a banana from my monkey or something, because I would break dress code. Like, I was just a little sparkly little unicorn kid that just wanted to frolic around and wear whatever and just glitterify the whole world. And I remember I had this, like, butterfly shirt that had a tank and a shirt, and there was it was maybe an inch of separation between tank top and shirt, and they got me, and I got in trouble for that. So immediately, like, this is going to obviously hugely play into now my role as a musician and, as a feminist and me as a stage performer. But then, so that was A. B, they were extremely biblical to the max. Like, it wasn't charismatic, it was scriptural. They still believe that, like, guitars and drums were sins. Like, it was hymnals.
Whoa.
Only, yes. Like, sacred music only, And then, and everyone sort of was, like, on board. It was very almost culty at times.
Oh, yeah.
Very
sounds like it.
Drinking of the Kool-Aid, because this is still... I was born in 98, so, like, this is 2002, 2003 that I'm starting school. Like, this is the 2000s, the 21st century, and we're telling, like, women that they, like, can't wear a skirt unless it's below their knees. Like, absolutely insane. So then the third thing was that once you got to 6th grade, which is then why I left, even my parents were like, okay, this is wild, you had to sign an oath that said that you couldn't, women obviously had to then dress a certain way, not just at school and at church, but also outside of church, and outside of the home. You couldn't listen to rock music, you couldn't listen to any of these things. You couldn't go to the movies.
Jeez, man.
Yes, it was all of these different things.
Oh, wow.
And, okay, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Absolutely fucking not.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I just was wondering if something slips out at some point, I'm not going to get, bleeped or,
no, you're good, you're good.
I'm way too lazy to go through these
things
and
that's true.
bleep stuff out.
That's true.
I noticed it had an E when I looked it up, and I was, like, a little explicit, like, square on the thing, but when I looked it up on Apple Podcasts, but I was just double checking. I didn't know how fucking family friendly I had to be, but whatever.
Oh, it's family friendly.
Anyways, so that was the oath that you had to sign going into the 7th grade. Like, hey, you are a minor. What do you even know about whatever? You can't even go anywhere unless your parents, A, say that it's cool,
Yeah.
Or your guardian or whoever's taking, care of you. So that should be enough. B, what? Like, this is, again, the 21st century and we're not going to go to the movies? Like,
yeah.
maybe not now. Like, COVID and all that stuff just killed that. But still, regardless, it's like, seriously? So even my dad, who was the conservative Christian one in the family at the time, he was like, all right, that's too much. Even I'm, my favorite band's Steely Dan. We're not going to stop listening to that. And he really respected that even as a 12-year-old or whatever. I was like, well, I don't want to sign it and then break it, because that's not my word. And he was like, that's a great reason. You can move to public school. So then I moved to public school, and that was fine. It's just normal high school, basically, experience in middle America, suburbia. So it's fine. And then eventually, kind of going into then college, I still went to church. It was then non-denominational. So high school was non-denominational church. In elementary school and into that 6th grade was Baptist.
The high school wasn't tied with religion.
It wasn't tied with religion.
You say it sounded like Baptist as you're describing it.
No, sorry. So the school that I went to originally, that I was talking to you, was a Baptist Academy.
Yeah.
It was Market Manor Baptist Academy. I will call them out to the day that I die. I do not care. So they were Baptist denomination affiliated. Now, when I went to high school, I was going to public school. But
and a non-denominational church. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I should be more clear. I talk very fast and blow through a lot of topics. Anyways, so then going into college, I chose to go with urging from my parental unit to go to a Christian college. So, starting with your question of what denomination was it, do you have any follow-up questions or commentary or anything on it so that before we move on to more questions or more topics?
You're good at this.
Yeah.
What is the Baptist doctrine? What can you break that down?
So I think
real quick, where was this in particular? State, city?
It was in Illinois. It was in Downers Grove, Illinois. So probably
because Baptist and what is called Southern Baptist here, there is a difference, but they're very much on the same. And we also have down here what's called Church of Christ.
Yes.
Which are very much like that in the sense that they're very wacky about don't do this and don't dance and don't all
exactly. I would say Church of Christ is very similar. I actually have a really, really close friend that's local to here that has kind of told me all of her horror stories on Church of Christ. But I think that it's slightly more laxed, I guess, than the Southern Baptist doctrine, but it is truly a rule set of, they even, I feel like, live sometimes in the Old Testament world.
So, do they believe in hell?
Oh, strongly.
Okay.
They are fire and brimstone.
Are they strictly King James version of the Bible, or do they use, what version of the Bible?
Primarily, yes. Okay. I would say KJV and NKJV were probably the two primary translations.
So not exclusive, but that's primarily what you learned out of.
They call it being saved?
Baptism is different than being saved.
All right, because I was raised Catholic here, which at the time, all those years ago, was not predominant the way it is now, but and I go into public elementary schools talking to other kids that were Baptist Church of Christ. They would ask me, "Are you saved?" And I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I'm like, "I've been baptized." And the minute they found out I wasn't, "Oh, you're going to burn in hell."
Right.
And this is, I'm in elementary school, and I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, kid?"
Right. Oh my God. So that's like, okay, that's a whole nother hell and all this
My
stuff.
mama says if you're not saved, you're going to go to hell.
Yes.
That's exactly
so
what you'd hear.
Being baptized is, in the Baptist, denomination or whatever, is like the rite of passage after you get saved. So you get saved, and then a public, basically, display of your salvation, of your commitment to God or into the church and the community and all this stuff is then getting baptized. But the key here in Baptist doctrine is that it's by submersion. So it's where, your pastor dips you and you rise again, symbolizing the death and resurrection of Jesus and all that stuff.
Jehovah's Witnesses are the same way.
Right, okay.
Bring you into the river.
Right. So
Catholics do it before. Catholics do it when you're a baby. They walk you over there, and the priest basically dumps holy water over your head.
Right,
while
they
you're
sprinkle
screaming.
it, exactly.
You're like, "Ah!"
And that's the thing about then the Catholic religion too, is that they believe that they're synonymous. Like, you get baptized or you get your christening when you're a little tiny baby. That is what is protecting you from hell.
Right.
So getting saved, what is that? Is that something you do in prayer?
Yes.
Okay,
it's
that's witnesses too. That's
exactly.
Interesting.
So in prayer, exactly, you say you have this moment of just revelation where you're like, wow, I am a sinner. I need forgiveness for my sins. Jesus is the only way. And so I'm going to ask Jesus to save me now, So
And then submersion by baptism, or baptism by submersion, is a symbol of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
I grew up the same way in that regard.
It's odd because in Catholicism, after the fact, when you make communion, when you're around an adolescent, 14 or so, you make communion, and that's very similar. You go and you speak to the priest and basically accept, because at that moment, because when you're a baby and you're baptized, it's basically an anointing. So therefore, you don't have to knowledgeably know what's going on. You're being anointed by the church,
right,
by your parents to protect you, if you will. When you begin to be old enough to sin or understand sin, you must talk to the priest and make communion. Communion allows you to go eat the body and blood.
And that's when you're in, this middle school age where then you do confirmation, right? Okay.
Confirmation is after that, but communion is when you go take the body and the blood.
Right. So
you're
Baptist,
not allowed to do that until you've made confirmation.
Right. Similarly, in that Baptists also do communion, but they don't do it weekly like they do it in Catholic churches. They usually do it monthly. That's where, or every couple weeks and stuff like that. But it's still the same thing. It's still the body and the blood. It's still symbolism, and they say very explicitly each week at the service, if you are not saved yet, do not do this.
Do they use grape juice or they actually use wine?
Oh, they are not Catholic. They use grape juice because drinking is a sin.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yes.
So they don't drink hard stop, no drinking.
No drinking, hard stop. Yes.
Wow.
To be drunk is therefore, therein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit.
Catholicism, the reason, and wine has always been a huge thing in religion because of the monks. That's how they used to make their money.
Totally, all the monasteries and stuff.
Literally what they did to make their money is where they made wine. And it was always the best wine. That's,
of course.
Nothing else to do but make wine.
Yeah, you get pretty good at it at that point.
So, but the funny thing is especially in the South and, states like this where you have dry laws that you have to stop selling alcohol at a certain time, and on Sundays you can't begin again until noon. Unless you're Catholic, you can go get a drink.
Oh, interesting.
Start taking your communion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was always kind of the joke. And they're like, but it's not wine, it's been converted to the blood. And it's like,
so, do they, are Baptists creationists in the sense 7 days? God
7 days, yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Is that how it also was with Jehovah's Witness?
They act like they're not creationists, it's not a literal 7 days. that's a figure of speech, because what one day in God's time is like 1,000 years in our time. But they're creationists. They think we came from two people, which I mean, yeah, and they don't think that the Earth is 5,000 years old.
Okay, so Baptists absolutely do. They're
do?
like, is no way is it more than 8,000 years old? Absolutely not. There was a worldwide flood. God made the world in 7 days. They are a literal interpretation of the Bible. When the Bible says thy word is truth, they are like, this is then true.
That's why I believe they don't dance, because there is one verse in there that says something about, actually what I think it is there's one, I don't know if it's Baptist or Church of Christ, that don't sing. They won't sing in church.
We did sing in church.
Because it is said that the word is spoken. And it doesn't ever say don't sing, but because it doesn't tell you to sing the word, and it only tells you to speak the word, they don't believe in any church music.
I think that's Church of Christ.
I think that is.
Because we did sing, and I mean, there's tons of verses in Psalms where, David
Southern Baptists definitely do sing.
Oh,
because that's the Southern Church that people know colloquially.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you get into music? Was that during school, or was that after you left the Baptist school?
So actually, it wasn't. The one good thing that I think this Baptist school did do is that it was a private school, so they can make their own rules and do their thing. So when they really did encourage playing an instrument. And so my teachers, even in pre-K, were like, is she starting piano? And my parents wanted me to start piano at that time too. So they were like, well, we do piano lessons here at the school. We have piano teachers, so we'll just take you out of class for your half hour or whatever, or during, this break or this, recess or PE, and you can take your piano lesson. So I did, and I played piano since I was 4. And it was great, honestly, because I learned so much, and I learned how to read music, and so it did start early. I started when I was very young.
That's awesome. It paid off for sure.
Thank you. Absolutely. They would probably be rolling over in their pews to know what
what you're doing now.
What I'm doing now. Taking my titties out on stage. They would not be happy to see that. But anyways, the cool thing is that I can thank them for that, and they incentivized playing music. So we did all these fun competitions at the end of the year with the other Christian schools in the area, and we all competed for first, second, blue ribbon, red ribbon, whatever place, with there was a concerto competition with piano, all this stuff. So it definitely made you want to be really good at the instrument. Now, I sang in church, obviously, and in all the school choirs where they made us do Christmas pageants and stuff like that, and Easter pageants. But it was still fun. It was still a great introduction to music, and I'm really grateful for that, from when I was younger. But I didn't write my first song until probably my freshman year of high school is when I started writing music.
You said your writing comes from a very personal place. What was your first song about?
Actually, it was about my parents' divorce. Yeah, and it was a really oddly, I guess, insightful song for a 14-year-old to write.
Yeah.
I remember, playing it for them and them being like, oh, wow, I didn't know you noticed as much as you did about us, and arguments or fights or circumstances or our relationship. And I don't really...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
so
you're
your
good.
parents were together up until age 14-ish, and then they split?
Yes. Okay. They started the divorce process at the end of 5th grade, and it was finalized at the beginning of 8th grade. So when I was 13, they stopped. They were officially
Were they both Baptist before that?
My dad was, and he has a lot of family that are also in the church. They are in the Southern Baptist Church. I have cousins all throughout Texas that were, and then some are pastors, and then other, higher ups in various churches or pastors' wives and all this stuff. And they all go to Christian school, and they all work very closely with the Christian community. And honestly, not super close with them anymore. Not in any sort of we hate you, sort of, you are, deviating from the past sort of way. Just more of a kind of a lost touch as I, kind of grew up and did my own thing.
I've got cousins like that too.
Yeah, it's not there's really no bad blood, at least that I know of, with them. But I think that was sort of my dad's upbringing then. His uncle was a pastor, and he was really influential in his life, and he was a Baptist pastor in the South, you know. Lived all across in Oklahoma for a long time, a little bit in Illinois for a while, but then moved to Texas when my dad was an adult, and we visited them in Texas. So there was a close connection with the Southern Baptist Church as well in the family.
Gotcha.
But my mom, almost not at all. You know, she believes in God, and I think, like, officially she's Catholic, but not a very religious person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, before we started, you were talking about how you still believe in a higher power, and I very much agree with that. I'm same on that.
Yeah.
What does that, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so are you ready to go down the rabbit hole?
I'm so ready to go down the rabbit hole.
Okay, so perfect. After I was, like, starting to gear up to release this album, and I was like, okay, it's almost done, all these things, I had this song that I was supposed to put on the record that I had written with another person, and anyways, there was a falling out about the song, and she said some, I think, very derogatory things to me. Maybe not, she didn't say derogatory language, but basically said, I don't want to be part of this song because you're going to be held accountable for your actions one day, and I don't want any part of that because God doesn't want, you know, you are basically directly going against what God wants. I know that, and I don't want to be part of this or be held accountable for what you're doing, and then now what I am supporting in your music, in your performance, and all these things. And I was just like, okay, peace, you know? So I have not talked to her since. I have not reached out. I think about every day wanting to send her this song, so I rewrote the song. Obviously, it's the last song. It's the final hurrah on Vices. It's called Quiet Love. It's definitely a direct kind of FU to that situation. And it is spiteful, you know, maybe at first that was my initial feeling of why I wanted to write this, but the song promotes redemption, I think, at the end. So, where I'm going with this. When she told me basically, like, God would not approve, you will be held accountable for this one day, I was an adult. This was less than a year ago. And I went into, like, a full mental spiral, like, full existential crisis, you know, of like, all right, fine, okay, God, if you're there, I want to know. So I went to McKay's bookstore in Nashville, you know where McKay's is, like the giant warehouse of all those books.
Yeah.
And I bought Christian apologetics books. I bought atheist literature. I bought, you know, the Dawkins God Delusion, and I was just
love God Delusion.
Right. And I was just reading, and I was like, look, I just need to know. Or at least need to find my answer to, are you real? Is there, you know, a religion that can fulfill all of this, and yada, yada, yada. And what I came to at the end of the day, as I read both, you know, agnostic or atheist or Christian literature, I kind of came to the conclusion for myself that at least I felt better and I could sleep at night believing in God, you know? And so regardless of whether or not it's real, regardless of what it looks like, regardless if I'm, you know, if I'm just an ant here on a planet with no greater purpose and I'm wandering around until one day worms eat me, cool. But that wasn't going to help me feel better. I want to feel like I have a purpose, and I want to feel like there is an afterlife, and I want to believe in something.
Yeah.
And it came from my want for that. Not because it needs to be real, but or I have to prove that it's real or something, but because faith does help me personally.
Yeah.
You know?
And these are really big questions that people have been wondering for as long as there's been people. I think that's where, you know, like, all these different religions come from, is there's something about people that it's an uncomfortable thing dealing with the void of reality and, like, the unknown. Like,
yeah.
And I guess no one knows the answers to these questions, but you've done a lot of research at this point. Does anything make more sense to you than another, is in terms of like what happens after we die?
Yes. Again, there's no, outside of maybe near-death experiences,
Yeah, no one knows.
No one really knows.
Yeah.
Also, your brain releases, a chemical to help for you to hallucinate anyways.
I was going to say, yeah, even
Like-
people who have near-death experiences and have those out-of-body experiences, I'm
They're-
not
they're,
discrediting that at all.
basically tripping on DMT, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I don't want to discredit it. Also, because, psychedelics, so many people also...
I've had some very profound DMT trips that have really solidified how I look at reality.
Right, and
I don't discredit that at all, but it's also, I don't know.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I was like, so many people and, testimonial reviews on psychedelics across the board have been eye-opening and not closing,
Yeah.
So I don't think that, like you said, I'm not going to discredit it, and it's really cool. I would love to hear about one of those. That sounds
sure.
awesome anytime. But I think research, I've always been a logical person, and I've always been a thinker. So I never, afterlife aside, regardless of what happens when we die, I'm not so concerned about that because I think it's all interpretation. Hell didn't even come up until the year 400 or something. Hell was not. It was originally, the original text is like a fire.
That's my favorite answer to the question, what happens after we die? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's my favorite answer.
Because we're dead. It's over. So what are we going to know? If there is something, and I hope to God there is, because it makes me more excited about something.
Yeah, this kind of be sad if it was just final. I feel
Right,
like.
exactly.
Yeah.
So why not? I'm going to believe that there's a something afterwards. But for now, the most logical thing that, through my research, that I think helps me justify the idea of God is that it's not a personal God. To me, this separates deism and theism, okay? So when you're a theist, you believe that there is a being in the sky or wherever in the ether that is personally meddling or changes the course of things on a whenever they want basis to, for justice, for mercy, or for wrath, or for whatever reason, because that is perfect. Unfortunately, what that doesn't do is it doesn't take away the best argument, or one of the only arguments I feel like that atheists love to throw at, theists, of, well, what about suffering? Because if there is a personal God that's equally merciful and just, and people are suffering, then it's a washed argument. Then how can they be merciful? How can they actually be just? Yada, yada, yada. Whatever. So I don't think that God, or the higher power, or whatever, can be a theist God. I think it has to be a deist God, which means an indomitable force. Just it is truly, it's not a person, it is not a thinking thing constantly. It just is.
That's really interesting. That's very
Very similar to Lovecraft.
I was going to say
Chaos of creation.
It's a lot like ancient Judaism. So the Tetragrammaton.
I am also a Messianic Jew.
Oh, okay.
I am, yes. So I'm happy you brought that up. My last name is Goldstein. So I'm the Jewiest Jew name, anyways, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Christianity, people have only taken scripture, particularly the Old Testament, people have only taken that literally for about 500 years. Mm-hmm. Ancient Jews understood these things to be metaphor.
Correct.
Yeah, and the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it, the Hebrew letters for it are earth, water, air, and fire. Mm. If you add the letter for spirit, it becomes Yeshua, or Jesus.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right? So it really is just an explanation of how things work. It's not a man.
We also have the entire Torah was written in this coded mathematical language.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the examples in the Torah where there is a man in the clouds, Job is usually one I point to. Job, he's having a conversation with Hasatan about Job, and he's making a deal and stuff.
Yes.
They didn't take that as that's God in the sky. That's a way for them to understand and explain it to people.
Oh, absolutely. I took a religious literature or a biblical literature class at a non-Christian school. So when I eventually left my Christian college, didn't last long there. We'll get into it. And then went to a liberal arts school in Chicago's Columbia College. I took a biblical literature class, and we really talked about it doesn't have to be real for it to be true.
I cannot agree more.
You know?
I have a deep respect for Scripture.
Me
and it
too.
actually really frustrates me that people misunderstand it and misinterpret it so much.
Amen.
And I don't...
like,
it ends up like me being really like dogmatic, like, no, this is what it means. But it's like, if you do your research, that is what it's saying.
Right.
These are metaphors for an explanation to the universe.
And also, when a lot of these things in ancient writing, like how we prove that something is, or more than likely, here's what made canon, you know, in the Bible, is what you can replicate the most times with scrolls and text. Like, what can you find the most copies of, you know? Yeah. And even in that, like, people then moving backwards in time to the earliest, you know, that we could possibly find real, you know, recordings of things was David. So the only, like, actual, probably real person that maybe lived was King David, you know? Or at least that's all that we have enough evidence or copies or replications of the text for his writings to being, you know?
Like Solomon and prior, there is absolutely no evidence for at all.
What's interesting about that is because that being the only historical proven figure in the Bible, as far as that goes, I mean, obviously Egyptians were real, but
of course,
Rastafarianism is actually spawns out of Orthodox Judeo-Christianity from Ethiopia, or Haile Selassie, Rastafari, their president, bore the stigmata, and he was actually proven direct descendant of King David and Sheba.
Ooh.
Yeah, Rastafarianism is very interesting.
So when you think of, when I began to study that years ago, it blew my mind because biblically, just like you're saying, you know, you can look at the Bible and say, okay, I'm not going to take that literally. But one of the other aspects is history. Is people look at the Bible and there's history all through it. But then if it's conflated and misinterpreted and used for a way to change things, then it's not what it is. And historically speaking, Rastafarians actually got it more correct.
I believe
because
that.
Because they are talking about the prophecy that is there that the king will return as he did and free the people of Ethiopia.
So Rastafarians, they think that it's already happened.
Right.
The returning of the Messiah.
Exactly. And that's also what I kind of believe. Okay, 3 things. 1, yes, all of it, yes. First of all, going back to your point of the Jew in Judaism, they knew it was a metaphor. And here's why, is because, or a great, I guess, explanation of that to me was when my professor told me, well, we are, like, the people that are writing this are using the language, it's so brutal and tribalistic and all this stuff, that they had access to. They the reason that God is so, you know, harsh and, you know, wrathful and all these things is because that's their only experience. Like, rivaling tribes, you die. Like, you know, so all these metaphors are harsh. Exactly. You know? There's no science to explain why, you know, lightning struck you, so therefore it is God. And like, so when you only are as evolved as your language. So it's like one of those other rabbit hole questions, like, does language make, you know, inspire thought, or does thought inspire language?
Ooh, it's cyclical.
You know? Oh, totally. So that's 1. 2, back to you were talking about really talking about the history of the Bible. Like, the Bible is all history, correct. So just like there's poetry and songs and, you know, gospel and like all these different categories that they have in the Bible, but yet they refuse to review different categories as in different ways. Like, Song of Solomon is a love letter, like a very seductive love letter.
Yeah, so, very raunchy love letter.
So like, why are we taking, you know, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
It's my favorite book in the Bible, probably.
It's gorgeous, exactly. So why are we reviewing, if we're not going to review that under the same, you know, lens as other things, then why not? And so for historical passages and historical everything, then you have to review it with the context of the time. So why are they saying the things that they are saying? Why is this, you know, when you do say man shall not lie with man, are they actually talking about the gays? That wasn't like a huge thing. Like, you know, there wasn't, you know, ancient Jerusalem pride, you know, in year 35. Like, they're not talking about the gays. They're talking about ownership of young boys.
It's a very interesting point, because when bringing that up, what you're actually doing is shutting down arguments from both sides.
Right.
Because, and I see this a lot, and it's a real trip. I've got a thing about, even if something is being done that isn't correct, to lie about something to change that is still not a good thing.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly.
You need to change things with honesty, because with deception leads more deception. So they'll just change back, or they'll find out and be like, well, what was the lie?
Right.
And so you have a lot of people that will talk about homosexuality, transgenderism. Oh, well, it was so predominant, and it, in Greece, and historically, no, it really wasn't. That stuff, what they talk about, cross-dressing was times other than America, and a lot of people don't realize this, we are one of the only countries that really had women's liberation of any type.
Yes. I mean, even still, a lot of, it's more of a Western culture.
Right.
Or a Western cultural ideal.
When you look at other countries, they were very, and still to this day, especially through history, they were very much, women don't do a whole list of things.
Right.
Including act in plays. That's why young boys dressed as
interesting.
women to act in plays. That wasn't that was cross-dressing for the sake of acting in a play,
Exactly.
but it was a very conservative reason.
And to your point, like there was no need for like scripture about like men not lying with men, because that wasn't a predominant thing that was happening.
Right, there wasn't exactly, like I said, a Tel Aviv gay scene. Like, it's not a thing. It's so silly to me that that is proposed as the actual what this text means. So what it did come down to, though, that I've heard all the sides of the argument, that stood out the most to me was that it was more of a context to sexual slavery or ownership, that older men would molest younger men in order for them to be their...
And it has a very brute, archaic language, because everything's brute and archaic at
right,
the
because
time.
And as bad as it sounds to bring up, the sodomy of young boys is very, very, very old of a practice. It's actually noted in the Kama Sutra, which is thousands of years older than the Bible.
Yes.
And where he speaks on, he doesn't believe it's right, but he says in a sutra, you do not separate, and that's another big point that we run into, especially in the world now, separating knowledge due to your beliefs. I don't think that's right, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't know about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To acknowledge something exists does not mean that I support.
It's kind of like you can't confront evil if you're not aware of it.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and he says, there's a tribe that does this. I don't necessarily agree with that, but this is what happens, so for me to omit this knowledge is not doing you any good.
Right.
No, not at all.
This and also, I think one of the things is when you live in a tribal situation, much like you can relate it to the eating of pork.
Sure.
Pork to this day, you have to cure the crap out of it, and you got to do so many things to it, or else it's Back then,
they didn't really understand the intricacies
to
of
try
why.
to explain that, it's much like the Druids talking to the Celts. They
Yeah.
don't understand that there's lava in the earth, so you just tell them there's a dragon down there.
Right.
Okay, same thing. Well, God said don't eat the pig. Why? Because God said. I'm not going to try to explain to you that y'all are going to get sick and die.
Right.
And I think maybe with the man not lay with man, it has to do with procreation.
That as well.
Because if we've got this many women and this many men, and then two of the dudes run off over here, that's two dudes that aren't going to be providing seed.
And if you're talking about like a tribe of people,
right,
they want to propagate their species as
right,
much as
and
possible.
when it's a small tribe and you're out in the middle of nowhere and everybody's starving and some of the kids don't make it because God takes them, then everything is very important.
Right.
Everything is very, it's like, look, we can't really let that
But also
slide.
warring tribes. It's like we need to get our population up.
Right.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons that this could be a necessary verse that are not applicable to the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
And then another, like you then said, is diseases, like with pork. They were trying to limit, just like why you shouldn't have sex before you get married, or before you're in a matrimony agreement there is no cure for diseases, for spreading illnesses, for all these things. So why would you sleep with a bunch of people, or be an adulterer or whatever? Because there's no way for you to recover if you do get HIV or a disease from it,
Interestingly enough, you say marriage. Marriage did not exist for a long, long time.
Yes.
The Bible actually says, and I actually had a pastor tell me this when I was discussing with somebody at work a few years ago where I was working, and whoever it was, the lady there said, "Are you not married?" Asking me. She wasn't really like downing me, but she was like, "You're not married, are you?" And I was like, "No, my girl, we're not married. We have a child, but we're not married." And this pastor who came in to make deliveries all the time just kind of turned, he goes, "But you are." And he rattled off the scripture and he says, it says, when man lays with woman, that is marriage.
Yes.
You have taken them onto your bed, which is why men had multiple wives.
Yes.
The idea in Native American and ancient tribes is when a woman became of age, basically when she started her period and would go to the moon tent, which was a thing in most tribes because it was a lot, and it's really funny because a lot of women, if I talk to them about that, they're like, some will say, that's just horrible. How could they, that's sexist and yada yada. But then a lot of them are like, well, no, that's awesome. That means I don't have to deal with, I got a week that the worst week of my month, I don't have to deal with their shit. I can go to this tent, everybody leaves me alone. The only people that are allowed in that tent are women.
Right, honestly.
Yeah. And that's where birthing happens.
Right.
We weren't allowed around that. So that's, because it was not looked at as women are lower, it was looked at as women are exalted.
Right.
This is what bears our children. We have to protect them.
Right.
This is literally why we live. And so you have these different aspects of the idea with marriage being, it's like you're saying, in the natives, when a woman became of age, they would find attraction, or another man would court her, and they would sleep together. If the seed took, she stayed with him. If it did not, they would both, okay, we're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And passions be damned. Now, obviously, there was probably inner shit going on. There was probably, okay, we really got some energy, but we couldn't really have a kid, so we went over and did this, but on these certain nights, this happens and whatever. Oh. That's probably been going on since the dawn of time.
All right, I mean, that's, I feel like, where every, teen drama, this is where it started, this is every, drama series that you watch, Riverdale, this is where that dates back to. But, exactly. So, then seeing how religious tropes and different religious texts and all these things, it's just like the Bible, or people say the Bible is sexist, and it's like, not really. For the time, the Bible was, radically feminist, they gave women a voice at all. They weren't property, they were characters, not sexist in, historical evaluation. You have to...
Definitely a lot of cultures weren't that progressive, for sure.
Exactly. Like you said, on both sides, it shuts down a lot of arguments because you have to be able to evaluate it with what is relevant to the time.
And this is not, what we're doing right now is not done often enough.
Yeah.
This is important stuff.
Oh, I know. It gets me going.
There's too many people that... Any one of us could speak a point that we're making, and they're like, but blah, da, 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 and you.
Right, and it's
on any side of the aisle could look at this and be upset.
I know, and it's like, well, I'm not trying to make you upset. I just want you to understand that maybe it's just not what you think it is.
The truth is uncomfortable for people, so it looks like an attack.
But honestly, for me, it's been so comforting. Yeah. To learn about cultures and societies where women were the warriors, to look at cultures and societies where it was the opposite. Like you said, you can't acknowledge the bad parts of life, of history, of anything without,
It's like we have to understand.
You have to understand it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I will talk for 20 minutes, it's fine. If you get out your point.
I was just going to say, like recent history, like Nazi Germany. It's like we have to look at that and understand it. Otherwise, that Nietzsche talks about, if you don't look at the past, it will repeat itself.
Yeah.
And it's like if we don't keep in our minds what happened, It's like that is likely to repeat.
Yeah. And the thing is that came from an atheist philosopher.
Yeah.
You know, like, exactly. You're quoting Nietzsche. Like, you can also be intelligent with whatever religious background that you come with, you know?
People trying to separate religion and science is just a complete misunderstanding of both religion and science.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They both are interwoven because religion is the part that science hasn't gotten to yet, you know?
Science is literally everything.
And if you don't think that the Bible's saying...
has to fall into that, because even if you don't believe in it and you think it's just psychological mumbo-jumbo, well, then that's psychology of science.
Exactly. Then that's still science, and at least it's a social science, because now it's an influence to how everyone reacts to one another, always, forever, more, amen. You know, like, so it's, exactly. So it's just, it does fall under, you're totally right, into the science category as well. And so this is, again, such a just great conversation, and it would be very helpful if people could swallow their pride for like 3 seconds and just go, you know what, I'm going to go into this conversation or this, you know, TED Talk, this whatever you call it, with an open mind and willing to learn or to at least hear a new perspective, even if I'm not ready to change my mind
That's my
yet.
favorite part about doing this is, like, I get to learn things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've learned a lot, like, in the last 30 minutes, like, talking to you,
Thank you.
about scripture, about Baptists, you know, like, a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people get scared of what ifs now, and that's where some of the best comedy would come from, if you just riffing on, well, what if this was the case?
Right.
And you can go as absurd as you want, but now if you even do that, then, you know, is that what you believe? And it's, well, no, I'm throwing something at the wall to see what it looks like after it sticks and falls off, you know?
Right.
So
humor's problematic.
And in the scientific method, you do push things to the extreme.
You have
the way you figure something out is to take an absurd idea and throw it through your mind and find out why every part of it's so absurd.
It's literally why we have...
And then you find out the little things that aren't. And
anything in this room.
Yeah.
Every microphone, every computer, every camera, every, you know, piece of furniture, every speaker, instrument, lights. It's all because someone had a wild idea.
Yeah. Some woman or man went, what if?
Yeah, what if we have something that could light up the room without sun? You know, like, it's ridiculous, but it's true. And so when people are small-minded enough to think, like, that this is it, I still don't think it's it. I think everyone should adapt the opinion that your opinion is always going to be adaptable, you know?
Yeah.
So I believe for now that God is this deist force, you know? It's the unfolding of events. It is a perfect, it's non-gendered, that's so silly.
It's not small enough that you could put your mind around it as a person.
It's jazz.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
it
jazz.
Is a piece of
God
paper
is jazz.
that is, if it was a piece of paper, or I'm sorry, if time linearly was a straight line, it's a piece of paper. You know, it's the whole thing from start to finish, and nothing's going to stop it or slow it down or reverse it or control it. It's just what is going to happen.
I'm of the opinion that, and one of the DMT trips I was telling you about kind of like solidified this.
Tell me.
I'll go through it briefly because I think Alice has heard this probably way too many times.
It's okay.
But
bullet points.
But I'm of the opinion that we're all the same person, and the thing piloting us is not necessarily unique. It's one. So this is actually the mystery of the Trinity, and people that talk about the Trinity don't even understand it themselves a lot of the time. But you have God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
So to me, that is, you have the Creator, the Source, and then I also am a firm believer that Christ, when he said he's the Son of God, he's referring to all of us. We're all the son or daughter of God, and
That's true.
Really, what that means is to be aware of that, that you are God. So it's like, I think I'm God, I think you're God. It's not particularly special, like ants are God, leaves are God. But it's one thing experiencing itself through a multitude of windows. I kind of had a trip where I was shown this, not in a really way that it was like explained to me. It was just presented to me. Apparently by myself, to myself, I guess. But why did I bring that up?
Because of the Trinity, the mystery of the Trinity.
Yeah.
3 is the magic number.
Also, yeah, numbers in the world. They're
Oh.
repeating numbers and all that stuff. And
I remember you were talking about like deism.
yeah.
I think John Lennon said it best. I am he, as you are me, and we are one, and we are all together.
Yeah. And I don't know if my, like, detailed opinion is that. The reason I believe in a deist God is because I still subscribe to some light, Christian light, you know? Like, non-denominational hippie Christian light, you know, is kind of what
That's a great name for a church.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, where we do drink wine, maybe during the whole service, you know? Just get people in the door, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's not...
Why does communion gotta be just like a moment?
Right.
I mean, we've been
We should
communing
just-
all service, baby.
Right, exactly. I really think it would bring a lot of people together. Anyways, the point is that I still then believe that that God the Father is deist. I don't think that it's personal. I just think it's doing what it's doing, and the thing that we can understand was represented in possibly Jesus, you know, because he is still he's not half man, half God. He is fully man and fully God. But the only way for us to understand potentially the ways of a higher power that is not able to be understood by our pea brains is through then this example of him. So I do believe that Jesus is, and you know, is God still. You know, I do believe that he is not just a rabbi from the time, not just a human that, you know, was cool and people wrote a lot of stuff about him.
So you think that Jesus was a real person?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I do think that. I think that there is enough historical evidence for me to say that it's not a silly opinion, you know?
I guess I'm not well informed about examples of Jesus outside of Scripture. Can you name any? Like, list any?
That is actually a really good question, and I don't want to talk about things that I know a lot about
fair enough.
without, you know, without that.
I was just curious.
I think, like, there's been, it's mentioned, it's more cultural than anything else, you know, but I would have to do a lot more research to
I'm definitely not saying they don't exist. I'm just not familiar with any references to Jesus outside of Scripture.
Right, yes. Or, affiliated translations of similar scriptures and, you know, or in denominations of different branches of Christianity. There are a couple ones that Christians love to throw out there, you know, that they love to be like, see, it's real, but, like, actually, I forgot what they were. So that's why I don't want to, like, say a bunch of things that I'm like, oh, then someone's going to comment and be like, she's wrong.
Unless we have new information since I last looked at it. I do know that there's like a census that Caesar takes at the time that Jesus was born, that he had everyone travel to Jerusalem.
To Bethlehem.
Bethlehem,
Or to
that's
their,
right.
It's to their, you go to the city from which you were from which you were born. So David and Mary went to Bethlehem.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's right, yeah. And I don't, unless, someone's found something more recently, I don't think there's any record of that happening outside of Scripture, which would be like a really big event that would be documented. As far as I know.
An ancient census?
Yeah, like that's kind of like a big deal to get everyone to do that.
Yes.
And it seems like there would be, if it happened, it seems like there would be some reference to it.
Yes. Now.
But again, do your research yourself, Alice. But
yeah.
I'm just not. Last time I looked into it, there wasn't anything that people had found about it.
There's a lot of, honestly, like something that I really do want to do in my life is, since I am, Jewish by heritage, ethnicity, not really by religion. I've, been a Christian my whole life. But, like, I have gone to, I would love to go, I have not gone. I would like to go to Israel. I really want to go to all the places that Jesus supposedly was, and all these things. And obviously have, like, a spiritual connection with it and a spiritual relationship with it. But also, like, to just get better facts, you know,
Yeah.
from Israel, not just our watered down, you know,
For sure.
research most of the time. Like, I think, like, honestly, with this, instead of even just, like, I mean, also, when you're researching things, look at who you're, like, looking up. Like, who's telling you this information,
Oh,
too,
sure,
you know?
yeah.
So, like, I would actually rather hear it from, you know, the Jews talk about
Yeah.
Jesus, because they didn't believe he was the Messiah.
Mhm. So if there's record of it with them, it's like that's almost contrary to what they'd want to believe, I guess.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if there's record of it with them, then he was just, because a rabbi, basically, is what then they would kind of consider his leadership to
You
be.
make a good point. If there's evidence in the Western world, they're not likely to in a like Christian society, you're not likely to like try and poke holes in it.
Right,
It's like
exactly.
This validates what I say, so I'm not going to.
But
Right.
they might
Yeah.
actually also would use historical reference to show that he was just some other regular dude.
He might have just been a regular dude,
You know,
though.
and been like, well, here's the dude that y'all are talking about, and he didn't, there's, you know.
Yeah, and he didn't
But,
rise
I mean,
from
well,
the dead.
When you get into, like, Rastas believe that whether or not, most of them Orthodox believe that he existed because it is written.
Yeah.
But they are much more, I don't want to say much more Old Testament driven, but they're very much,
I'd say they're more Old Testament driven.
yeah, they're very much both sides of it. But basically their belief is that Jesus, like John the Baptist, was just what they would call another Rasta.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to do with their way of living, which a lot of people don't realize is that Rastas, which don't really like to use the term ism, Rastafarian or Rastafarianism, because they're nowhere Rasta. That a lot of their beliefs don't all come, well, some of the main things that we know about them don't come from Christianity. Dreadlocks come from the Sikhs, just like smoking reefer, cannabis.
Yeah.
It didn't come from a Christian. It came from the Sikhs that they met in Jamaica when they were bringing Hindis and Indians down to the Panama Canal to build it.
Yeah.
So that is how new that philosophy is. You know, Marcus Garvey, you know, there's pictures of him, you know, but he's also a prophet.
Yeah.
They consider Marcus Garvey, Christ, John the Baptist, all those guys to be prophets and Rasta men. That they weren't the coming and they weren't anything more than the rest of us. But they were really just trying to tell us that.
I really think that's, in my own study of Scripture, that is what Jesus was saying as well. Is he's saying, treat other people the way you want to be treated, because that is you.
Yeah.
That is you.
And I agree. Like I was saying, I think that, again, kind of or at least what I meant to say with Jesus being, like, I still believe that Jesus was God or a prophet or whatever. It was some sort of, you know, spiritual iteration of another, you know, being, of something more supernatural. I don't necessarily think, like, he is a Messiah. That doesn't mean he's the only one, you know.
Sure.
There could be more people, like what, you know, that you were saying, that are spiritually inspired prophets. I mean, they talk about inspiration from God all the time when they were writing in the writing of the Gospels. Like
Not
Paul.
anymore, though.
No?
No, because they'll tell you're crazy if you told them God told you something.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. I see what you're saying. Like,
Right, but at the time-
he's saying, like, nowadays, if you were to say that, you're
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I want to know
insane.
what. I
Stop.
want to know when that started. Like, at what point they're like,
Yeah.
you know what? All right, everybody. All this God talked to me, that ended. Okay.
Yeah.
If he didn't talk to you by yesterday, he ain't talking no more.
I think
All right?
that's-
I ain't trying to hear this.
That's probably, like...
But that's not even totally true. People still speak in tongues. People still,
Yeah.
you know, it's all practice.
But
People,
the social idea.
Yeah.
I think
back in the
certain
day, you know, somebody came into the village talking about,
I think
God
that's
spoke to me, and everybody's like, really? You tell me what he said.
That's-
Now
that's
everybody's
probably,
like, dude, hook it up, man. You got some of that kill.
Well, that's probably like, no, I'm the guy God talks to.
Yeah.
You can't hear God, only I hear God.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So obviously turned into that, but that's just human relationships.
Yeah.
You know, so do I think it's impossible for there to be multiple people that God has talked to? No. Because what do we actually know? So then with that being said, like, all these religions and all these things, are they probably then like, I subscribe to Christianity because it's what I know.
Yeah.
And it's how I was raised, and it's what makes sense to me because that's how it was communicated to me. And that's now what my language and thought process is structured around. However, does that mean that I think that you are wrong if you're a Muslim? No, it's basically the same sort of arc.
It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same arc, and also they come from the same place. Give me a break. It's all Abrahamic religions, so, like, what are we arguing about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They said, a linguist the other day I saw said something about what did Jesus call God?
That's right.
Historically, he would have called him Allah.
Because that is the,
that was the language they spoke.
Exactly, they spoke Hebrew.
That's, Aramaic.
Aramaic. Yep.
Jesus, for the time period in the area, he would have spoke Aramaic, and the Aramaic word for God is Allah.
Allah. Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know, and that's the same with Judaism. Like, especially all the monotheist religions, but even then when you go into Norse mythology, Greek mythology, all these things, there's so many tropes. The floods are the same. This is we're all kind of trying to make sense of natural events, things that have happened, and trying to fill in the gaps. So,
actually, that leads me to something else. I might have some insight on this as a songwriter.
Okay. Yes.
I think there is really only one story, not just in religion, but overall, that can be told.
Yeah.
And we're telling it in different ways. I'm a writer also. I write poetry. I'm working on a novel right now.
That's awesome.
Thank you. But I find myself in the point where I'm like, there is no such thing as an original idea.
Of course not.
It's just different ways of saying the same thing over and over again.
Yes. There is the same couple of tropes. And honestly, like, I even tell this to all these people that are being all overly artsy-fartsy. I don't even love it that much. I'm sort of like, resolve that. Like, I don't want your, like, cliffhanger weird, weird for the sake of being weird. Like, give me
I know exactly what you mean.
Right, like, give me, like, hit your plot points that you learned in English,
Empty
like
esotericism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
a good way of putting
that. It's so heady, and it's like, no, it's not. It's empty as hell.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. We're just doing things for the sake of being done. It's random. It's chaotic. And so it's not a story then. So, like, I'm with you, and also, I don't think we put so much, pressure on being original that you then sort of deviate from just, okay, well, what's good? Like, make good music, write good stories,
I did notice in what I did hear lyrically of what I was listening to your stuff, you do tend to, you have a lot of referencing that is, it's familiar. Your lines, and that's in songwriting in general, especially in, I don't want to say commercial songwriting, but in songwriting to give to the public and to appeal to the masses, it's very, very important to instill a level of comfort in people. And I've talked to Alex about this before, about being campy.
Yes.
And campy, and a lot of people take it as a bad thing.
He says I'm campy.
I'm not necessarily fond of
I agree.
things being very
It's
campy.
true.
But that's me.
Yeah,
totally.
totally.
I'm not the aficionado and like, well, you can't do campy shit,
Yeah.
But because there's a place for it.
Of course.
And there's also, like anything, there's levels of it. There's even people that write kind of campy can get too campy and realize it.
Yeah. Just like if you can also be too unoriginal in the sense of you could be too familiar,
right?
And then it's just run of the mill,
right?
It's a ride. You have to ride the line,
right.
Yeah.
But, and it's very much that is very much how you make it your own thing,
right? Exactly.
When I write, when I was much, much younger, I was a musician and a poet. I wasn't a songwriter. It wasn't until I was really in my early 20s that I could consider myself to really, that's when I got taught by a songwriter, when she's just shut up and play 3 chords and, quit trying to be jazzy and cool and,
totally stop
put it out, So what I was able to do was simplify the music on a level. Then I could take my very poetic lyrics and not necessarily simplify them lyrically, but simplify them rhythmically.
Yeah.
In which, when you're writing that way or doing any kind of art, it's sometimes good to give yourself a box to work within.
Yeah.
Because
it's kind of necessary.
Yeah, it's kind of it gives you this challenge, because if it's going to be that open and esoteric, then it's got no box. Then it's like, what the fuck are you talking about here?
Right. Oh, totally.
It's like, all right. I mean, I laid here in the field on some acid and like tripped on it, and I really, it's cool. But if you're really trying to catch somebody,
yeah,
then, and I'll find that I can do a lyric line that has a familiarity to it.
Absolutely.
But I will do an unfamiliar line with familiar structures, with like the back and forth or the return idea with a different statement.
Totally.
And I find that allows my esoteric stuff to stick with people, because if you can't understand what I'm really saying, it's easy to get turned off of the track. It's easy to be like, well, I mean, it sounds cool, but I don't know what you're talking about. But if you can say things in such a way and trail somebody up to these things, then it rings in them. If they don't understand it, it still rings with them. They're like, I've got to figure out. I know that means something. I know that hits some way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I always tell people, I want them to tell me what my song meant first.
To put words to that, it sounds like the difference between abstract and esoteric. Whereas like abstract has no definition.
Right.
Esoteric has a definition that's just not obvious to you.
Yes,
right.
Sure. Yeah. Now, I'm extra all across the board. It's just who I am. Like, in personality, to music, to all this stuff. So, the reason that I want, like I said even in the beginning, my goal is to be relatable. Because no matter how extra I get, I am still a person that's chilling in a flannel talking to y'all and having a great conversation and a great time, So, when it comes to the music writing, my job first and foremost is to write a good song that you can sing along to, that's going to be easy for you to learn, to do all these things, but still has some deep-seated meaning. Writing that line, so instead of it just being a bunch of like nothing that just is boring, or is just regurgitated from the million other artists that have said something just like it, but something that still sounds familiar and like, oh, okay, maybe I haven't heard it quite put that way before, but I know that feeling. This is the same feeling I got when I've heard this, when I saw this, when I whatever. Now, my production, on the other hand, that's why y'all gotta listen to Vices when we get done with this. Because I think that's where I really get to shine on some of the fun sounds and the crazy and the dark pop is what I call it. I think we really made a good modern pop record that has a lot of nuance to it. A lot of, like, you are a producer. So I don't think I had one song that was less than 95 to 100 separate tracks of different things and all that stuff. So these were enormous projects that were just gang vocal upon stack upon layer upon, bells and whistles and the whole nine. It's big. It's loud, So that's why when, like, you can't go too crazy then with the subject matter either. You gotta have your, and even then when you said, sometimes it's easier to write when you fall into a structure. When I came up with the idea for the Dante's Inferno parallel, it was actually, now kind of segueing in, it was a great segue.
Yeah.
I actually found a lot of creativity and comfort within, okay, well, these are going to be my 9 circles of hell. And it came to me when, like, a friend actually suggested it. A friend told me, like, hey, I think there's 9 circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. I was like, no, you're thinking of 7 Deadly Sins. And he was like, no, I'm not stupid. I'm talking about the 9 circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. And I was like, I'm like, because I didn't want to do 7 Deadly Sins because it's such a play.
So you were set on 9 tracks?
No. I was set on an odd number. I didn't want there to be like 12, 16, 10. I didn't want, it wasn't going to be short. Like
that's when your friend presented to you that there's 9 in Dante's Inferno.
Because I was like, I think I want to do something weird. Like, I'm tired of these people doing these like long albums. Like, love T Swift, saw her this weekend, but I don't want 16 songs on this record.
Yeah.
It's too much. I don't care. No one else cares.
It's digestible the way you made it.
Exactly.
Nowadays, 9 is quite a is quite a full album.
Right.
There's a lot of people getting away with a lot. I mean, I say that it's
Attention
funny.
spans are less.
Because
People are doing EPs with 3 singles that they've already released, and the EP is 4 songs.
Yeah.
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 I'm
Yeah.
like,
And I find it funny, and actually I think he had mentioned that to me, because the album that I'm working on right now that I'm putting out, I'm putting 9 tracks on, and it's very specific that it is 9.
yeah.
And there's a very specific reason for the number 9.
Yeah.
So
One of my other favorite albums is Enneagram, and it's the 9 personality types, and I loved that album. It's by Sleeping at Last, and it's so good. Anyways, go ahead.
So on Vices, like kind of just talking process, creative
Yes.
process.
Mhm.
Where do you think art comes from? Does that
Ooh.
start with you, or is that
Sometimes two
is
things.
that up here? Then you just pull it down, or
Okay, I think it can be both, because my experience is, and how I've reacted to it, and like literal things that have happened to me have heavily influenced my art form. And then there are other times where I've written a song in 15 minutes and I have no idea. I just feel like a vessel, you know? So I think there are different things. Some are internal struggles that I need to get out. Others are subconscious, like almost you tap into the like unconscious, the collective unconscious,
Yeah.
and of things that you haven't even realized yet, you know, but you wrote a song about it already. And there's a couple of songs I've done that on, I feel.
I agree with you. I think it's a combination, mixture, or something like that.
Yeah, me too. I think it could be either. Why not?
So,
yeah.
If you disagree, like let me know. But I
Sure.
I think it's probably the energy part of it, like the raw, unmolded clay part, comes from something, and then the part that's on us is the kind of like making something out of that.
Yeah, like we're the sculptor.
Yeah.
You know.
So
It's like inspiration energy. I mean, who can say where inspiration comes from? I mean, you can say I watch some. There's certain records I can listen to that will inspire me to record. They make me feel like writing music and recording music specifically, but that doesn't mean that is triggering inspiration. But
Yeah.
what does inspire? What does it really mean? You know, it's not a tangible thing. You know, is it a thought? It's not. So it's like you're saying. I think that is the energy that you're talking about that is coming down.
Yeah.
And then when it comes through us, then it's up to us to filter it and you know, decipher it.
And I guess I mean, if you like scale out, you know, or zoom out, like I think that kind of applies to then even situations that happen to you, relationships, whatever. If they're all part of the master plan, if something is going to happen, you know, even if it's just chaos and we're all just molecules hitting each other and stuff, it still wasn't totally in your control. This is just how you're choosing to react to it. You're writing this song, you're telling this story, you're healing, you're coping, you're destroying, whatever. You're doing the thing because something else happened to you.
That's
you know?
interesting. Do you believe in free will?
I love this
That's
question,
a big
but
one.
loaded. Believe, okay, here's my very, very hard distinction that I'm going to make. I believe in autonomy, but I do not believe in free will.
Okay, yes, I would agree with that.
I believe that you have your bubble, you have your space, you have your autonomous rights that you can and cannot do within the bounds of societies and nations and reality, and it's not the right of the government or any other person to infringe upon what you can and cannot do. Okay. Now, with that being said, I don't believe in free will.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the reason I don't believe in free will is because actually it directly then contradicts my opinion on an impersonal God. So, if I am to hold the opinion that there is a God, that is a force, that everything is just happening and it's an unfolding of the universe, then I actually have to lean very Calvinist on this, and I'm not of the Armenian mindset that you choose and all these things, because I think that the problem with free will is that it leaves the person then to blame if they choose wrong. And I don't like that, because when it comes to your eternal soul on the line, I think that's incredibly unfair.
Yeah.
And then also then kind of scaling out, like, I don't see how we might think we have the illusion of free will, but I don't think that we actually have it. I think everything is predestined to be a certain way.
Sure.
And or even if it isn't, in the small things, you are still going to get to point B. You're getting from here to here, and nothing is going to stop it. The world is going to keep turning. So with that being said, and eventually we're all going to die. So is that actually free will? Because if I actually had free will, I could do basically whatever I wanted. And that's not true at all.
That's true. We have confines, which means there isn't free will.
Exactly.
Yeah, time, physics, like these things. It's kind of like we were talking about with art. You need a parameter in order for things to happen.
Exactly. Humans think better when we can compartmentalize.
Yeah.
It's why we love to label ourselves even when we want to free ourselves of labels, you know? And it's not wrong, it's not bad. People are searching deeply for identity, so we create our own confines, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, in order to make us, make all of this make sense to us.
Yeah.
Making the universe make sense is what science is, and science, by actuality, is categorizing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole idea with that is you can categorize everything to the point of individuality.
Yeah.
And because I'm so far against, like you're saying, we love to categorize, yet we can't stand it.
Yeah.
I cannot stand things to be non-individualized, especially humans.
Yeah.
But it is very fun and interesting on the brain to take the world around you and decipher it into patterns. And what Gibson talks about, pattern recognition, that's what really separates us.
It's kind of like we're the universe learning about itself in a myriad of ways.
Which goes back to what you were saying about we're all just God experiencing.
Which also is why I think AI is the next step in evolution.
Oh, yeah. Oh, here's a rabbit hole. Yeah.
Exactly. If we're going to go there, because, computers teaching itself and experiencing itself into consciousness, basically, is what... It's coming. I don't know. Everyone grab... If you all think the zombies or however else is, got... The rapture's going to happen...
That's small potatoes.
Right. I was like, you think that's a big deal. Okay, well, wait until the AI take over. We're dead instantly. It's done.
I totally agree with you, and I think the only way to survive that is to integrate with it, to become it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like...
Avatar, then, for real.
Yeah, I think...
We would basically end up being enslaved by machinery to keep machinery functioning.
Yeah.
I think that this is kind of a large concept, but I think that when Neuralink happens and we're thinking at such a high speed, this conversation can be had in a millisecond.
Yeah.
And it's at that point, what's going to happen is we talk so much.
1,300 podcasts 5 minutes ago.
I think
exactly.
What happens is we will reconcile all differences in humanity.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll eventually reach...
Because you will have all understanding.
What's it called? Entropy?
So what...
Yes.
No, it's singularity.
Or singularity,
It becomes... we become a hive mind.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of... So consciousness kind of goes you have God, and then it separates, and then it comes backwards. It comes apart like a big bang, and then it comes back together. And then probably what happens then is this collective hive consciousness that we are goes, man, this is boring. Let's create a matrix we can go into and forget that we know that we're all the same person. So at that point,
maybe this has already happened too, if you believe
that's exactly where I was going.
Right. So
where in that are we even?
That's the what's his name? Yeah, Elon Musk. Yeah, that's his whole the simulation just repeats itself, or reinvents itself. Once you can enter a virtual reality and it becomes realistic enough, you just start over basically, or something like that.
When you think about how energy and matter, which technically are the same, in the universe work. It's all waves. And that description is actually perfect because that is what happens with everything. Everything pulses in and out, in and out. The idea of 1 and 0 is the simplicity of machine language. The idea of analog is between them.
Yeah.
Because you can't really get any more on than on or off than off, but you can regulate in between them. And when you have logic, the human mind, we have a logic side, and then we have our thought creative side. And that's literally the duality. That's the balance. That's the fight. That's what causes this what the fuck.
Yeah.
Because, we can be extremely stoic and say it's on or it's off. Or we can be extremely aloof and be like, it's never either.
Either way is really correct, I guess.
Right. Yeah. But to be one way is incorrect. Because you've limited yourself from the understanding.
So, if you could go back and pick out, this is a kind of a hopefully creating understanding question. One good thing that being raised religious did for you, what would it be?
That's an easy one, actually.
Okay, good, awesome.
I have, so Jehovah's Witnesses really, something I've noted, I don't know much about Baptists, so it's cool hearing about that.
That they're extremely similar, it seems, at least.
But something I've noticed, talking to other friends that were raised religiously is, they go to church, they talk to their pastor, but they never, really studied the Bible. Jehovah's Witnesses really study the Bible. At a young age, I had read the Bible, and it's I am grateful for that, because I have a deep personal relationship with Scripture, and I have a really profound love for it.
Yeah.
And that is that's priceless.
Yeah.
I think that probably my thirst for knowledge in terms of Scripture. So I kind of problem is okay, now I'm having issues with what I'm teaching, and I'm disagreeing with the people that are teaching me about this, and it's I have a problem with doctrine, because doctrine basically says this is how it is, and if you don't agree with that, then you're not part of the doctrine.
Right, which is...
You're not part of our group if you don't believe it exactly the way we do. And that I have a serious issue with, because we are all students of Scripture. We're all in the process of learning, and what man can say they understand it absolutely?
Right.
That's kind of arrogant. So it's
yeah.
I think... so I was abused as a kid, near my early teens.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened up, that was part of kind of what opened my eyes to things. But I'd always had questions that weren't getting satisfactory answers.
Right.
But I knew at age 14, 13 that this was not for me.
Yeah.
So when I turned 18, I moved out. I was also homeschooled.
Oh, okay.
So that's something I thought was really interesting about your experience is there's a lot of similarities with how we grew up, but there's also a lot of differences, because the school aspect was not part of it for me.
Sure.
I was homeschooled from fourth grade. I went to elementary school, but then after that I was homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone of my peers was in my church. And I guess that is similar to you, because you went to a Baptist school, so everyone at that school is kind of in that
church, or in that at least that denomination, or a church similar to it, something like that. Yeah. So yes, but still but then your group of peers is even tinier,
Yeah.
And then eventually I only went to that elementary school through 6th grade, and then I went to big school, or big junior high, and then even bigger high school, where there was 1,000 people in a class, So, I mean, it's totally different to then see how then, in these crucial developmental years, how we then sort of became who we were through all these things. Yeah.
It was very formative, for sure.
Yes.
I think a negative example can be just as powerful as a positive one, where it's there's basically two responses to abuse. You can become jaded and say, I'm going to repeat this cycle, which is unfortunately something we see a lot with not just Christianity, but religious groups, where it's abuse happens.
Yeah.
That person goes on to become a abuser in the same way.
Right.
Which I think that's one response to it. The other response is, I've been hurt and I'm never going to perpetuate that in the world.
Yeah. And that's a really, like, beautiful thing to realize. I think, obviously, there's still, I say what I'm going to say very delicately because I don't want to take away from the trauma and impact that any sort of abuse or abusive relationships or, you know, whether it be parents, partners, whatever, anything, like, is going to say. But in religion, like, if we're equating a lot of religious, you know, leaders to be abusive, which I would say they are, you know, in a lot of ways.
And not just any particular, not just Christians, not any particular group of Christians. It's just a thing that happens.
It can just be that, you know. I think that you then grow up to then be an abuser and, you know, look down upon people or judge people based on your religion because you've literally just brainwashed yourself. You know, or someone they have brainwashed you.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, and so yes, you repeat the cycle of abuse, but you don't think it is. You really don't think it is.
You're touching on something I think is really important here. I think I'm maybe this is ignorant of me, but I think people are good at their whole. I'm very much a humanist, whereas like people are good. But hurt people hurt people. Oh,
I've said that this week probably 4 times already. You know? And it's only Wednesday, everybody. Like, it's only Wednesday.
And, and this kind of goes back to the free will thing, too. But, like, the people that... I mean, we have to have law as, like, a preventative thing.
Of course.
But the people that hurt people are hurt children.
Oh,
that have grown up.
Especially when we see so much psychology now that's really talking about what are your childhood events and traumas, the things that really, like, shaped you, that stuck with you forever.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's healing that part of yourself, you know, and it never does, and you think that it does maybe throughout your life, but I think that's then the difference. Do you go on to keep hurting people, even if it's not your intention? Intentions are bullshit, I don't care, you know, but, like... Actions are what matter, and if someone is telling you that you're being an asshole, you don't get to decide whether or not you're the asshole, you know?
Damn, that's... a good point.
So, like, you are what other people say that you are.
I think maybe that's something I needed to hear, actually.
Oh my god, you are the sweetest. What are you talking about? You are not the asshole.
I can be an asshole for sure.
Well, I guess we all can be. But, like, that's not the point. Everyone has bad days. But anyways, yes. Like, the people that don't heal that part of themselves are the ones that are perpetuating this. But I think it's, like, that's why I equated it more to brainwashing. I don't want it to come across as, like, I'm not validating anything that happened to you, me, or anybody else.
Yeah.
It's awful. But at the same time, like, you're right. They're just hurt and they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't even know what's wrong because they don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. You know? It's something that you've repressed and kept down years and years and years and years. So having that amount of grace to understand that, and then, in the self-awareness that you have to then choose to, I'm never going to do this again. Regardless of what I believe, never again will I be part of something, and this is why I'm not subscribed to a church right now because I haven't found one that aligns with what I believe. It is, I will never do what the churches have done to me.
I think you need to start a church. I would go to your church.
Right? Again, hippie Christian light, you know?
We're just drinking wine, talking about God.
Drinking wine, talking about God.
Yeah. Honestly, communing all day, man.
Right. It would be a great idea because also we could still read and then all have this, like, this Socratic seminar based on, like, our findings and our readings, you know? So, like, I think that if I could do that, if I could start that church, I will start right now. Bible study at my house, you know? Like, I'm down, but it's not to indoctrinate you.
Sure.
It's not to make you feel like what you believe or your religion in the past or whatever is wrong, terrible, ungodly, you're going to hell. Because at the end of the day, we don't know. We have no idea. So the fact that we are then going to treat other people differently is, to me, the worst thing that you could possibly do.
I have a saying that I'm dogmatic about anti-dogmatism, whereas like I'm intolerant of intolerance.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I really am, because that is what, no matter how the church has packaged it to me, no matter what pretty, flowery, fluffy words that they have said of, oh, you are loved, and you are made in God's image, and blah-bitty, like, they have done some terrible things to me, and I will decide that they are the asshole. And yes, was it God? Was it this, non-personal being that is whatever. No. And my qualms are no longer with the higher power.
Sure.
My qualms are with the people that hurt me,
Yeah.
and the institutions that hurt me, and the doctrine that they stand for. And that's why, at this moment, I cannot, effectively, I can call myself, Christian, based on what I believe, but most Christians would not look at me and be like, you are a Christian. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is...
Well, that's very unchristian of them.
You don't know my heart, only God knows my heart. Exactly. Stop it. But yeah, anyways.
When was the last time you cried? Sorry to just...
Whoa!
Sorry. It's something to ask everybody.
No, it's great.
But it is kind of a fastball.
Okay. Are you ready for the most white girl answer in the entire world?
I'm ready.
At Taylor Swift, the concert on Saturday.
Did you have to wait 4 hours?
No, that was Sunday.
Okay.
That was the brainstorm on Sunday.
That...
Which is amazing.
Which song was it?
No, it's the fact that you cried about music.
Yeah, I cried about music.
It wasn't like when I woke up this morning and realized life, or like
no.
every day in the bathroom on the in the shower and getting ready for work.
I love Taylor Swift's new record.
Oh my God! If
so
you
good.
would have asked me 9 months ago, when's the last time I cried? It would have been 35 seconds before I walked in this building, on the phone with my friend, bitching about some ex of mine that pissed me off. Seriously. But now, the last time I cried was, and it's hard for me to remember, and then I'm like, oh, it was Saturday, because and it wasn't even a specific song. The whole concert was great. Stan Taylor Swift forever. Going into it, I wasn't even super, a huge fan. Me and my friend actually won tickets. So we didn't pay $1 million bazillion.
Wow.
That's awesome.
We won the Capital One contest. What? It was something ridiculous and random where it was probably 1 in 25,000 people win this ticket. Whatever. So we went, and it was so good. And why I cried actually though was I was looking at the stadium. I was bopping to some songs that like Fearless. I think I cried during Fearless. That was the song. Because I just remember it had such a heavy sense of nostalgia. And then also it made me feel empowered. As a woman, as a performer, as a musician in this industry, I went, wow, I can totally do this. And so once I had that feeling, it was like a good cry of there's nothing stopping me. Look at you. Look at me. This is what we all rise together means. I'm feeling good about myself because you put out 10 albums of great work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She played a really long set, I heard.
3.5 hours.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm not a performer.
The Sunday night one had the delay, but they said she didn't end till 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
1:45 in the morning.
Yo,
She started at 10.
That's a performer.
There were kids missing school Monday because their parents were just don't worry about
Fuck
it.
it.
Fuck it. Right, exactly. So, but no, it was an amazing show, and that's why I cried.
That's a good answer.
Thank you.
I think you were talking about relationship stuff. That's not a bad answer, but sometimes a song or a movie is almost a more mature answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, but I'm saying even just my growth in the past year of my life, being another year out of the house, another year paying my own bills, another year going through the early 20s. Relationships and friendships and things and growing pains and changes. I look back, and if that's my answer, I'm doing so well. I'm great. I have really got it made, and I've got a lot to be thankful for. So I'm very happy with, honestly, I come to you in peace today as a very happy budding pop star.
You give off that energy.
Thank you. Good.
Alice Vices is out now. Also check out Reconciling Religious Trauma. It's really fucking good. It discusses some similar topics to what we've been discussing today.
Yes. Also, if you want, we should.
We're gonna listen to it right now.
Oh,
Alice.
really?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, you too.
So
as soon as this is over.
Exactly, Alice. You're not getting
link
let
below.
off the hook.
Link down here's.
Yeah.
And June 23rd, you got a show at the basement.
Absolutely. But
the OG basement.
OG basement, not basement. What'd you call it? Basement least.
But yeah, we got what was it? We got Music Shitty.
Well,
We got least side.
Wait, okay, so music shitty.
This
That's funny.
well, this is a thing that I've decided to officially do, and I'm officially doing this because I can.
This is not a joke. He's really doing this.
New Nashville, NU Nashville,
Yeah.
is what has become of my beloved music.
He's making
city.
a map where.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Instead of letting New Nashville kill Music City, I've moved her to South Nashville. So we've decided now we are going to separate into 3 areas. We have New Nashville. When you pass Chestnut Street to the south, you are now returning back into Music City.
You better watch your ass, Chestnut, or we'll bump it down.
Oh.
Yeah. And when you cross the river, it's not until you hit 5th Street, then you're in leased Nashville.
I love it. No, you're totally right. Because honestly, so when I'm almost at my 2-year. I'm like 3 weeks away from my 2-year in Nashville.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't go crazy yet. But my first year, I rented an apartment in Franklin. And I fucking love Franklin.
Yeah.
They are totally like, and this might sound crazy because I'm totally this like hip hop girl, and they're like not about all of it. Sometimes some are cool, but they are so interested in you, in what you're doing, and promoting you, in actually being your fan. You're in music. It's not this industry heavy, super fake, weird thing that we've got going down in New Nashville, like you're saying. You pass that South line, I'm with you. They hate
You got
Nashville.
it. You know,
like they
and
hate what it's
all
become.
of this is said with love, but it's also true.
Oh, we love you so much. But honestly, I love living here.
Yeah, me too.
I really have no qualms
I went
with it.
to New York this past week, and I'm
Like
like,
you said,
man, I
stressful.
fucking miss Nashville so much. I missed like 3 shows I really wanted to go to.
And Chicago is too cold and too dangerous, so I will not be returning. You know, like
We are absolutely glad to have you down here.
Yes.
thank you so much. No, let me know what you think. I feel like we all just became very close friends. I feel like, you know, like I'm happy now that I can add 2 more people to the list of people I enjoy. You know,
Well,
it means so much to me.
I will definitely be at your show on the 23rd.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's for good reasons, good cause.
Yeah, it is. Also, like, we haven't totally announced we haven't fully announced the show yet, but like I really would like to. So if anybody has even suggestions of any sort or whatever, we've got a couple leads on it, but we really would like to do a portion of merch sales or ticket sales to like a drag queen fund, a, you know, sexual assault center, a, you know, gay youth, trans youth, you know, like charity, something like that. So we really want to make sure that the event is also monetarily, you know, giving back to the community.
I have a lot of friends in the trans community, so I will definitely see what's going on.
We want to make sure that all suggestions are taken, and we kind of, if people are interested in, you know, accepting donations, we want to give them. So, you know, like, but we want to make sure that all the charities are like good and, you know, funds are used well and appropriately and stuff like that too. So, anyways, yeah, I'm really excited for you to come. It's all going to be for good purposes, hopefully.
Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank
This
you
has
for
been a great
having
time.
me.
We could literally do, I know like you and I could do this for hours, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
No,
for
let's
sure.
once we have a couple shows, you know, maybe we can hang
We'll
out
give it some
outside
time,
of this.
but
we
yeah.
could come up with like a good theme for a part 2.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for being here. Check out ARREIS Rising. Vices is out now. Link below. Bye.